Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rundown. I am your host, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. But as we all know, I do not do this program by myself.
No, sir, you do not. I try to assist as often as I can, the best that I can from the East Coast. My name is Mike Peworski. I will be sitting with you today here on the Rundown.
Phenomenal. Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you on this fine Taco Tuesday following a
Oh,
Labor Day
boy.
Monday.
Listen, I got at the local VFW, I got asked to help tonight. So I did all of the prepping yesterday. We're doing a taco night, a charity night for the national commander. We're doing charity events around the country. And so I'm doing this street taco festival. I'm cooking, beef, pork, chicken, all the street tacos you can eat. Did all the cutting, all this. It's marinating right now. And Craig, when I'm done here, I'm on the way, baby. I'm on the way to go make street tacos all night long.
Oh, dude. Well, that does me absolutely no good here. I mean,
I'll send you pictures.
yeah, pictures don't taste as good as street tacos.
Oh,
Even pictures of street tacos.
put a little seasoning on the pictures. They taste just fine. Just fine. Get all your fiber in your diet too. Gluten free. Gluten free.
Look, if that's how your street tacos taste, then I'm good.
I know. Listen, I've had one or two of them like that, and I made sure in the taco blog I put them in there. So, but yeah, it's gonna be a great street taco night here, Taco Tuesday night here, and I hope everybody else out there can enjoy some delicious tacos as well.
Yeah, I feel sorry for people who have never really enjoyed a good street taco. It is,
Oh man,
yeah. There's just something about them, man. You just shovel them, and just like,
yeah, yeah. They are, as the kids would say, they are good AF. Yeah.
yes, sir. They are
Al fresco, outdoors. What do you think of
They
man?
are,
They're good outdoors.
excellent
Yeah.
al fresco.
Yeah.
It's just covering all your bases, ain't you?
I mean, that's what that means, right? When the kids say that, they're enjoying it outdoors.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
All right, Maggie. Well, there's a lot of good news, or a lot of news. I don't know if all of it's good, but there's a lot of news to talk about. So why don't we go ahead and jump right to it? I one of the things I spent a lot of time studying when I was in school was statistics, and you learn that they always say that there's three types of lies. There's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. And if we know that if anybody is capable of telling lies and utilizing statistics to do it, it is the mainstream media. Now, we all know that the mainstream media hates Captain Florida. We all know they hate the governor of Florida because he is stood up to the intelligentsia and the liberal mainstream media and to the Democrats time and time again, and is not standing for any of the tyranny that leaders in states like California, Oregon, Florida, and New Jersey are trying to put in place. Well, there was a story this recently in Newsweek where they basically were twisting and changing the numbers in order to fit the narrative that Florida is the deadliest state for COVID-19. And Mike, since you're in Florida, I figured you'd like to share some of the details in terms of how the mainstream media, in this particular case, Newsweek, well, it's basically lying about what's going on there in Florida when it comes to COVID.
I remember, Craig, when you used to read Newsweek and you got real news, and there would be actual information there. Now they sit around and they say things like, "Hey, Captain Florida's make us look bad. We need to drop a hit piece on them," and that's what this is. Just as you alluded to, Craig, this is their disagreement with Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. The numbers they put in here are just, let's see the polite way to put them, just damned lies. Just fabricated. And like you said, you got real statistics, fake statistics, and you got Newsweek statistics, right? Where we're just going to make them up as we go along. Something I think they said the numbers were 1.72 per 100,000 people are as the current mortality rate in Florida over the last week. So that's 1.72 over 100,000 in Florida. So I started to do a little bit of my own research, Craig. If you include the 1.72 that everybody died with COVID, that means there were no other deaths in Florida for any other reason whatsoever. That means every death in Florida was COVID related. Um, there was just a crazy guy who murdered a couple of people here not too far away. I'm curious to see if in next week's statistics, those are COVID deaths as well. Because I've seen traffic accidents, I've seen cancer, I've seen many things in Florida very recently that are all COVID related deaths. The other one that I saw, Craig, was that it's 300%, over 300%. The ICU bed space is up over 300%. Okay. Well, Craig, if you've got a hospital that has 100 ICU beds, right? And normally you sit at 50 or 60%. Folks, if you don't know this, ICU beds are used every day for post-operative surgical care. So if you've been under anesthesia, you go to the ICU for 2, 4, 6 hours, whatever it happens to be, until they're convinced you're out of harm's way from any of the anesthesia effects. Guess what? They weren't doing those during the height of COVID. Everybody had the fear. They didn't know where this was coming from and what was going on. Now we're seeing elective surgeries again. So now that there's more elective surgeries, more beds are being used in COVID. Now, Craig, they didn't tell you we're using 60 out of 100 beds. They said 300% more, which means if we had one bed before out of 100 being used, and now we have 3 out of 100, that's 300% increase. You see how they play with the numbers on you, folks? You see how they toy with you?
Mike, exactly. It was funny you said that because I've done some of the same analyses here in California and in Sacramento County. And like you said, normally ICU beds sit somewhere around 40% occupied.
Yep.
And what you have to do is you have to break the numbers down and you have to pull out, okay, how many people are hospitalized in the county or in the state or in the county with COVID? And then you have to look at how many ICU beds they have and then how many beds are occupied. And you'll find that a huge percentage of those ICU beds are occupied with people who, guess what, don't have COVID-19. But they act like every single bed is filled with COVID-19 patients. The other thing that they don't tell you, and they're looking at these particular statistics, is when they say that they have the highest death rate, they're not talking about COVID overall. They're not saying, okay, let's go back to the beginning when COVID started, or they're not even going back to the last month. What they're looking at is they're basically going back and they're pulling the numbers for a specific set of days. I think in this case, it was like 11 days, right? And they keep going until they find a set of days where Florida has the highest rate of COVID deaths. And then they say, okay, yeah, so for this period, now they don't say for this period, they don't say till later down in the article when you look that it's that. And oh, by the way, I almost forgot the other thing. That's people who died with COVID, not of COVID.
Correct.
So we don't even know what that number is. And they're all doing this. And mind you, that first of all, California still has the highest number of deaths from or with COVID. In terms of the rate, the mortality rate, New Jersey, the absolute highest. Mississippi, Texas, Louisiana. I mean, Florida is all the way down at number 17. All right. And that's at Florida's overall rate is like 2.1 is
right.
what it is overall. California is 1.7. And that's largely because we have such a large state with such a large significant portion of that also living in rural areas. The point is that there's still not much difference between California and Florida when it comes to the overall death rate. And you guys didn't shut down your economy. You didn't lock your kids out of school for a year and a half. So yeah, they're basically playing footloose and fancy free with the numbers in order to attack Captain Florida.
Yeah, exactly what's going on. The other set of numbers that we were taking a look at was they're talking about the spreadability rate, how fast the COVID-D variant spreads, and then we have the highest rate. I think there was something out of perhaps I think it was 72 out of 100,000. 72 out of 100,000 people reported positive on the COVID-19 Delta variant. And that you have to get out there. And of course, that means you have to wear a mask. You have to get your vaccination. It does spread fast, Craig, but we also know that it's nowhere near as deadly as the original COVID that came through. We saw this with another statistic that slipped under their radar today, that those that are showing up at the hospital complaining of COVID, that this week in Florida, it was 54% of them were vaccinated. That means 46% we're not vaccinated. They don't tell you that. So again, I am not trying to dissuade you from getting a vaccine or getting a booster. If you're in the high risk category, go out and get yourself the vaccine. Do your study, talk to your doctor, find out which one is best for you, and get it. Neither one of us here on the program are anti-vax. We're for educated vax, is what we are.
And we're also not for shaming people into getting vaccines, because the reality is everybody's going to get COVID. We will say this again. Everybody's going to get it. Some people will be vaccinated and get it. Some people will be unvaccinated and get it. Now, so far what we know from the studies is if you're unvaccinated and get it, there's a greater likelihood that you're going to wind up having some serious, some health challenges. But once you get through it, this is the thing, you're probably going to have an immunity that is going to be stronger and last longer than from the vaccine.
Yeah, I would say that. And that's something we've seen again this week. We've talked to some doctors about it as well. If you've had the COVID-19, whether you had symptoms or you didn't, don't go out and get the vaccine afterwards, because you have the natural antibodies in your body, just like Craig said. And now if you put artificial antibodies in your body and you have natural antibodies in your body, guess what you're going to have? You're going to have a little antibody fight in there, a little fight club going on for the next 4, 5, 6 months. That's the people.
Mike, first rule of Fight Club.
Well, we're talking about the COVID fight club, so it's somebody else's fight club.
First rule of Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club.
So you're going to get the COVID fight club going on inside you. That's why people say, oh, I had it and then I felt symptoms for 10 months. Yeah. Because they went and got a vaccine after they had cleared the virus,
right,
and now they got a little battle going on inside them. Don't do that. Yeah. Talk to your doctor about that. Please. You wouldn't go out and get any other vaccine after you had the disease or had the virus. It's just not the way it works. That's not the way any of this works.
No, it's not. But yeah, the point is that the media is playing footloose and fancy free. But here, folks, here's the good thing. Here's what I'll encourage you to do. What a lot of media is doing now is they're actually also linking to the data. Go look at the data for yourself. And I think you're going to discover that a lot of, in particular, what's in the headlines is false. If you look further down in the story, a lot of times you can tell in the story what's true by what they're not telling you, especially when you go back and you look at the data. So look at the data for yourself. Once again, we will continue to say this. Get the data yourself. Do your own research. Speak to the medical professionals that you trust, and then make a decision that's best for you and for your family.
You got to look. You have to dig. I'll tell you why. Listen, here's a great example. Craig, do you eat Hot Pockets? Hot Pockets. Do you eat Hot Pockets at all?
I do. It's not an often thing, but
okay,
yeah,
right. Same as me. It's an after 1 a.m. Found it in the freezer kind of snack. Well, the latest ones say, for the ham and cheese one, says now with 40% more cheese. So I'm sitting there looking at the old pack and the new pack. All right, they're both 12 ounces. They're both the same size, and one has 40% more cheese. You know what that means, folks? One has 40% less ham. Okay, so be careful of what you read. Yes, right. It has 40% more cheese, but this one has 40% less ham. That's why they're trying to skew those numbers and turn them into 54% people were vaccinated. That means 46% weren't. Okay,
right. All righty, moving right along. Now that we've devolved into talking about Hot Pockets.
Hot Pockets.
So now we are headed for, and folks, just so that you know, the interesting thing is, you guys have heard a couple of weeks ago, there was a lot of talk about the infrastructure deal that several Republican senators agreed to. There's also a lot of talk about the subsequent reconciliation bill, which isn't necessarily the reconciliation bill is the process, but it's basically going to be a spending spree that Democrats are shoving into this reconciliation bill so that they don't have to deal with the filibuster in the Senate. Well, they're coming up against a major deadline coming up here, dealing with some fiscal issues. Let me show you this real quick. This is actually from MSNBC. There are a couple of things that they wanted to note. First of all, you have federal unemployment benefits expired today, which should do a lot actually to help the economy, because now there's going to be a lot of people who've been refusing to go back to work who will now have to go back. Or hopefully they'll go back to work now that they're going to be receiving about $1,200 less every week or every month. Hopefully that'll get them back to work. by the 15th, they have to have the reconciliation draft deadline has to be in place, meaning their spending spree has to be fully put together. And you got a lot of liberals who are not, or progressives, I'm sorry, that are not very happy with some of the stuff that is not going to make it into that bill because they know that they can't get it past some of their Democratic members, their more conservative Democratic members. You've got the House deadline for the bipartisan infrastructure bill is going to be at the end of the month. Government funding runs out at the end of the month. Folks, that's the debt limit. That's the issue right there. So the question is, are Republicans going to agree to increase the debt limit, which is basically going to be the amount of spending over our budget that we're going to be allowed to do? Now, the mainstream media points to this as a quote-unquote train wreck, because in the end, if it doesn't go up, then you might wind up looking at government shutdown. I think for conservatives, for us, I think this is it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to make sure that some of this really, really bad stuff does not get funded.
Craig, in the morning when I get up, I turn the local news on because it's the default station on the interweb TVs here, and it gives me that 15-minute cycle of my morning news, which is all I need. Then I turn it off. Well, I got busy this morning and it ran for about 4 or 5 cycles. And one of the stories, the top stories today here out of Florida, was that the federal unemployment was run out. Now, it ran out. In Florida, the governor shut it off a month or 2 months ago to try and get people back to work, and it worked rather well. And now that the federal is running out, all the last of the funding is running out. There are people just in a panic because they don't know what to do now that they have to go back to work. There was one guy on, and he was their lead story. And Craig, it looked like this guy lives in his basement and refuses to go to work every day because other adults are going to beat him up and take his lunch money. This guy got on, and his story was, the COVID's out there, and now with the new Delta variant spreading so much, how am I expected to go back to work? I need this money to live. And it was just like, where is this guy? Somebody fill his basement with water. Get him the hell out of there. Get him to go back to work. Let's get these people back outside into society. All right,
Mike.
You want to get your vaccine? You want to wear your mask?
I think Ida already tried that, Mike.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we got that's another story in the news. A bunch of people from New Orleans that got flooded out coming to Florida to find jobs. Well, there's jobs in Florida. We actually have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country at 5.1%. The nation's at 5.4. If you want jobs in Florida, you can come get them, and they're going to give you bonuses. So come on, we'll take your tax dollars from you.
Well, once again, I just think that my big concern once again is with all of this massive spending. It's not just massive spending. A lot of it is a changing of how we view the role of government, and it is opening the door towards increasing dependence on government. The other thing we're looking at is we're already dealing with serious inflation, and contrary to what the administration says, we're still seeing inflation happen every single month. Record increases in the cost of products, goods, and services. And now they want to infuse another, we're talking like $5 billion, $1 trillion, $1 trillion or something like that in government spending into the economy. No, that you print that much money and put that much money out on the streets, you're going to continue to see that increase in inflation. And now we're actually looking at stagflation, where you're going to see the economy eventually slow down, and you're still going to see prices increasing. I think we need to stand, and then the debt limit is where we need to make that stand.
Craig, there's also I saw in the news today. There's evidently a genius running around Florida. We know that the inflation is here. We know that it's happening. We know that it's being artificially manipulated up in Wall Street to try and make it look like it's not. But you can go out and just look at the price of a gallon of milk and look at the price of a gallon of gas, and you know immediately that inflation is hitting us. Well, there's some corporation in Florida that's going around and buying up a lot of the low-income rental properties. The duplexes, the apartment complex, those kind of things. And the people on the news were like, wow, maybe this means the housing market's turning around. And I'm like, you utter morons. You absolute ridiculous people. This is you're creating slumlords is what's going on here. They're buying these places up. They're going to either take you for every dime you have until they evict you, or wait for the federal handouts to start coming your way because you don't get a job. Either way, they make money and you're out on your butt. So
Right.
this is how inflation works. Okay, this is how it works. They're going to take advantage of the poor because you people are not the poor people. The news media is too stupid to recognize what's going on around them.
Well, part of it is they are the corporate news media, so they're to a certain degree they're kind of in cahoots. They're a part of the cabal.
Yep, exactly right.
Speaking about cabal. Now, Mike, you picked this story out, so I'm going to go ahead and let you take the lead on this one regarding the Taliban ban.
This is it's just so telling. What do we hear now? We're on September 7th. So we've been out of Afghanistan. We've been out of Kabul there for officially, I guess, 7 days, right? And now all of a sudden that the local populace, the people of Kabul, the Afghanis, have decided to protest. They were protesting against the Taliban and their rule because they were starting to restrict women's rights and taking away rights from certain individuals. These people that have enjoyed a number of freedoms over the last 20 years. These people that took for granted the freedoms that was being given to them by the American and coalition forces that came in there and died, just short of 4,000 total across the board for all coalition forces, and just took it for granted. And now all of a sudden the Taliban's back. They think, Craig, they're going to be able to go protest and going to be heard, and it's going to be okay. Well, the Taliban, did you see how the Taliban, Craig, I'm going to hand this back to you. Did you see how the Taliban responded to the protests in the street?
Oh, well, let's start shooting fire and start shooting warning shots.
Yeah.
They
were shooting warning shots.
At least now they're shooting
protesters.
warning shots, right?
Yeah.
This is the new gentler Taliban. They're not shooting people first. They're starting with warning shots.
Listen, let's be clear. They shot the warning shots into the protesters. Okay. that's just the way the media does it.
Yeah.
The way the media reports it. So all of a sudden now you've got the thinking that everything's going to be okay. Oh, well, we don't need America anymore. We don't need the Afghan National Army. We don't need the Afghan National Police Force. We'll be fine. We'll just exercise our First Amendment rights. Oh, wait a second. We don't have First Amendment rights.
You don't have First
Taliban.
Amendment.
We don't have anything. We don't have the Afghan Constitution. We don't have any of that now. We have Taliban. Craig, when I was over there, I remember talking to one of the police chiefs out in the town of Policharki, and they had just had the second round of elections. Karzai had been elected. Now they were electing their Congress, basically. And a woman had been elected Congress from this district where this police chief was. And I said to him, how do you feel about a woman being elected? And he said, it was great. It showed movement with his country. They were becoming more Western, and it was really good for Afghanistan. And I said, now, but what if she's your wife and she didn't cook dinner for you? He goes, well, I still beat her. She's still my wife.
I'm sorry, that's not funny.
No, but his response was, the way he said it was, listen, they want to be seen and they want to take advantage of the things the West has to offer, but they're not willing to let go to their traditions. And here you go. You have the example of that 13, 14, 15 years later now, where that's exactly what's going on. We were going to stick to our traditions and we're going to have no consequences. Oh, guess what? Taliban's back. They're shooting warning shots into your chest.
Right.
Sorry about your luck. Maybe you should have tried a little bit harder when the Taliban started to roll through.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing is a lot of people don't realize, we're talking over the last 20 years. You're talking about a whole generation that's grown up with, not the same freedoms and liberties that we have here in the United States, but compared to what the Taliban is putting in place, imagine, 20 years of girls being able to go to school and get an education and become scientists and doctors and all of that. Imagine not having to hide, right? Imagine being able to actually protest when you have concerns with your government. All of that is now gone. A whole generation of folks are now going to have to realize that is not happening anymore. And either you're going to have to stand up to the Taliban or that government, or, that you get what you get. And like I said, you know, you wanted the Taliban, you got the Taliban.
Listen, we trained over 500,000 people in the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police, which is, by the way, very coincidental with these 660,000 machine guns that are missing, because that's what we gave them to arm themselves. So, you know, we spent 20 years developing a military and a police force, 20 years of trying to make them a professional corps of individuals. And you had some that you knew took it seriously. And then you had the other 80-90% that were there for the paycheck and did not care. And we all knew the day would come when we left and the Taliban would drive in on a goat with a board with a nail in it and take over again. And that's what happened in that country. You had your chance, had your best shot you're ever going to have in thousands of years from the history of Afghanistan, and you blew it again. Again.
But Mike, and a big part of it is, and I know that there are some folks out there who are going to hate to hear me say this, but the fact is our form of government works because it's based on a certain set of values, and those values just happen to be rooted in Judeo-Christian principles. And the problem is that works to the antithesis of the faith belief of many of the people in that part of the world. And that's the reason why whenever you try to go to democracy, you give them democracy and they eventually vote in theocracy. And that theocracy then turns into a tyranny. It turns into a tyrannical theocracy.
Well, you know,
dictatorship.
To be accurate, we gave them the chance at freedom. They designed their own government. They chose kind of a mix of a presidential system with a parliamentary system behind it, and you know they did a good balancing act with their religion and with their government. What they did, though, they didn't turn to tyranny. Tyranny came knocking on the door, and they just didn't fight it. They said, "Oh no, we'll be okay. We'll be okay." Now, listen, America, coalition, we're just as much as blaming this. I've said this to you before. We're still in Japan. We're still in Korea. We're still in Germany. And those are some of the most stable governments on the planet because of the assistance and backbone we gave them. Well, we didn't do that in Afghanistan. We turned our backs on those people. But those people still, after 20 years, should have been able to stand up and fight for themselves.
Yes, they should have. They should have. But the problem is you have too many people who, quite frankly, are, you know, okay with the Taliban.
Well,
Or at least they're okay with not fighting the Taliban.
Right. And listen, if you think that this is not going to affect you, the Taliban was maybe 25, 30,000 strong. Well, now they just added another 500,000 to their ranks. So,
yes, they did. Yes, they did. Moving right along. Maybe, Mike, if they had violence interrupters there in Afghanistan, maybe that would solve the problem. All right, for those of you who don't know what violence interrupters are, this is it was an idea to help replace police officers or have them respond to things like gang violence and stuff like that in order to bring them in to try and, you know, smooth over things. That a lot of them are former gang members, people who were involved in the fighting, to get them to kind of come in and you know, create peace and instead of bringing in law enforcement and locking people up. Well, there's Vox, actually, interestingly enough, came out with an article where they looked at various different studies and data and statistics. And, you know, the liberal, left-wing, progressive Vox News has basically said, yeah, they're not working. It's just not working. Like, we, by the way, something that we didn't need to do a study in order to determine whether or not it would work. Right, Mike?
You know, this is the stupidest crap in the world. This stuff is absolutely ridiculous. And you're right. You know, you knew this was not going to work from day one because as soon as they mentioned it, it sounded idiotic. Let's roll directly back to the story we just talked about, Craig. We've got protesters in the street in Afghanistan. You've got the Taliban shooting warning shots into the air and into the crowd. Well, perhaps, Craig, what we should have is we should have these intermediaries there. Perhaps if we sent people to the Taliban that said, listen, we don't want violence. We just want to sit down, hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and get women's rights back. Do you think the result would be any different? Okay. Maybe they would spend less ammo because they'd only have to shoot one instead of shooting the whole crowd. That's about the only benefit I can see. This is stupid. This is idiotic. This is trying to negotiate with the lion not to eat you, is what this is. The lion is going to eat you. You are the food. You cannot control the nature of the lion. You cannot negotiate with him. Well, if I don't bring the gun and I just bring open hands, then we can talk about it. No, just means the lion gets to eat you faster. That's all it is. If you go to I don't care if you go to a kennel, if you go to the zoo, if you go to a jail, if you open those doors and try to negotiate, you're going to be eaten. One way or another, you're going to be eaten alive.
Well, Mike, they've done 5 different studies over the last 5 to 7 years on this whole idea of violence interrupters. And the interesting thing about it is, and these are studies that are all done by left-wing academia, intelligentsia groups, and they found that not one of the 5 studies could they find any real positive results coming from these particular programs. In other words, they're simply not working. And the other thing that we're seeing, especially in the last 2 years, where there's been a massive spike in the number of shootings and the number of deaths relating to violence, they're just finding that it not only is it not working, but it's having absolutely positively no positive effect in these particular communities. And by the way, you have places that are spending millions of dollars on these particular programs, and at the same time, they're defunding law enforcement, and they're making it harder for law enforcement to go after these individuals who are involved in these shootings. And the funny part is, when you talk to law enforcement, they'll tell you, we know who's doing the shootings. We just are not in a position where we can do anything about it. And how many cops do you know that will tell you that look, if I could just go arrest that guy, and that guy, and that guy, you would see shootings go down 40% in this neighborhood.
Yeah, and for the most part, Craig, in a lot of the cities, they still can go arrest them, but they don't. They've chosen not to. Why go in there and subject myself to charges of that I did something wrong, that I was criminally violent, that I arrested him and I took his freedoms away. My qualified immunity doesn't cover me anymore because somebody filed a complaint. Now, I'm not talking about hurting an individual or excessive force. I'm talking about 90% of the complaints that come in are crap. This guy's going to get pulled off the road. Now you're going to have these bad guys go to jail. They're going to be out before the end of the day because of bail reforms. Because the 3 strikes rule is gone. So now you got nothing. So why should the police go out there and risk their lives just to be, chastised for doing their job, risk imprisonment themselves, and have the bad guy face no repercussions?
I don't know. I know it was a rhetorical question, but I felt the need to answer it. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Until there's real police reform, and that is letting police have the authority to do their jobs again. I'm not talking about breaking any laws. Right. But at this point, you have law enforcement that won't do their jobs, won't answer normal calls because of the consequences that they face in today's society. And it's going to continue at least for the next 3 years. We know that.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Well, why don't we move on to our parting shot, right, Mikey? All right, so you picked this one out, so I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce it.
Well, we all know that we left Afghanistan, and then we've seen actually this week that there's still Americans on the ground in Kabul. We know that there's private organizations that have gone there, many of them military, retiree-backed. They are there with these people present, with these American citizens, with these special individuals, high-risk targets, but they can't get the U.S. State Department to allow them to leave. The U.S. State Department will not allow them to leave. They will not do the clearance. Now you ask the White House, their story is different. The fact is they're still on the ground there. They did get 4 people out. A military team got 4 people out yesterday. And, of course, the State Department took credit for it, and they had nothing to do with it. They broke and left without the State Department's permission because nothing more than Joe Biden wants than to be out of Afghanistan. He wants to be out of there with nothing left behind. Let's go. All right, Joe, here's our plan. We're going to leave Afghanistan, and here's Joe's plan. Here's our parting shot.
Get in, loser. We're leaving Afghanistan. And then he drives off without you.
That's my plan. When I said we're leaving Afghanistan, I meant I was leaving Afghanistan.
Pretty much. That pretty much sums it all up right there.
The U.S. government left. The people, we forgot them.
Well, it's funny, and you keep hearing stories about like Glenn Beck. He had a plane that basically was stuck on the tarmac. The Taliban was basically holding him hostage. Do you know if they ever got out?
As of yesterday, no. Glenn Beck's plane was still there. The Taliban was actually letting a lot of people get to these aircraft, and it's the U.S. State Department that won't give them approval to leave. And now understand, it's the State Department in Afghanistan really has no authority. What they have is their relocation centers in Doha, in Turkmenistan, in Kyrgyzstan, where U.S. State Department is set up, and they have yet to say, yes, we will receive them here and process them. So you could take off with these people, but there's nowhere they could go. They can never get off an airplane because they're immigrants, and no country's ever going to let them in without somebody saying, we will take you. And trust me, nobody else in that part of the world is taking any more Afghan refugees in. And the only place they're going to get asylum is the United States right now.
Right.
But our relocation immigration centers won't take them.
Well, what's funny is they're also finding that only a very, very small percentage of these individuals actually are the quote unquote interpreters and people who've actually worked with us, and they have the special visas that will get them in. And those are the people, when we were talking about getting people out of Afghanistan, those are the people we were talking about, people who actually worked with us and helped us, not just people who were looking to get a better life. Those people ought to be the priority when it comes to, well, let me clarify. The American citizens and permanent residents are the ones that need to be the greatest priority. Then after them, the individuals who work to help us, who the Afghanis who were there, who helped us, need to be the next greatest priority.
Yeah, but instead, that's not going on. We know that those people that worked with us right now, Craig, are systematically being hunted down and killed. Yeah. It's already begun. So,
all right. Well, hey, let's real quick give a shout out to our sponsors.
Guerrilla Machining, Grid Defense. Hey guys, Guerrilla Machining, Grid Defense. By the end of the week, we will have some nice party gifts for you on Freedback Friday when we all get together and have a good time, and we'll probably quiz you about today's show as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, folks, that's going to be it for today's rundown. Remember, like, share, subscribe. Encourage your friends to do the same. This is the place to be to talk about 2A news and conservative views. If you're not watching, I'm wondering why.
Peace out.